It was a cold, crisp evening as I stepped out of the taxi. My body ached from a week of back-to-back meetings and endless paperwork. The night air, though chilly, offered a brief sense of relief, like an escape from the long hours in stuffy offices. Yet, that fleeting sense of freedom quickly evaporated the moment I stepped into the parking lot. The place was supposed to be familiar, comforting even. I always parked my car in the farthest corner, away from prying eyes, near the back gate. But tonight, something was wrong. My heart skipped a beat as I scanned the lot and realized with growing disbelief that my car was no longer there. Where is it? I thought to myself. There was no way I could have misplaced it, not here. The space I had carefully chosen, the one that felt like mine, was now empty. In its place sat an old, rusted sedan. It was barely recognizable, with peeling paint and a flat tire. The kind of car that had clearly been abandoned for years. For a moment, I stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. My mind raced, searching for answers. Maybe I had parked somewhere else? Maybe I was just so tired that I'd forgotten? But that felt wrong. I was certain of where I had left my car. I fumbled with the keys in my pocket, my fingers trembling slightly as I pulled them out. The cold metal key felt strange in my hand, like a cruel reminder that something was off. No, I hadn't misplaced it. Someone had taken it. But who? And why? I trudged back to my apartment, my steps heavy, the weight of confusion pressing down on me. When I walked through the door, my parents were sitting at the kitchen table, eating dinner. They looked up at me with neutral expressions, but I could tell something was different. They were acting normal. Too normal. I couldn't hold back any longer. "Where's my car?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the anger rising in me. My mother looked at me, hesitating for a moment before answering. "We sold it." I blinked, the words barely registering. "What?" "We needed the money," she continued, her voice soft and almost apologetic. "Your brother has been struggling. We sold it to help him out." The shock hit me like a ton of bricks. "You sold it?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Without telling me? Without asking?" That car was everything to me. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was a symbol of all the hard work I put in. My father, who had remained silent up until this point, finally spoke. "We did what we thought was right. Your brother needed help. We didn't want to burden you with it." I felt my world tilt, my knees almost giving way. The betrayal stung. How could they do this? How could they sell something that had cost me so much effort, so much sacrifice? All those late nights, the extra hours at the office, the unpaid overtime, all of it was tied to that car. It was more than just a car. It represented everything I had worked for, every single struggle to get ahead. And they had sold it. Just like that. "You think that's fair?" I snapped, unable to control my emotions anymore. I worked so hard to buy that car. I could have done something else with the money, but no, I chose that car because it meant something to me. And now it's gone, just like that. For what? To help him buy a new gaming console or whatever he's into this week? My mother's face crumpled, her eyes watering. "We didn't know what else to do, honey. Your brother, he's been in a bad place. We couldn't stand by and watch him fall apart." I didn't want to hear it. I didn't care about the reasons. All I could feel was the cold void where my car used to be. "How could you do this behind my back?" I said, my voice dangerously low. "You think I wouldn't care? You think I wouldn't notice? I've been busting my ass, working every day to provide for this family, and you sell my car like it's nothing?" "Please," my father interjected, his voice calm but firm. "We did it because we thought it was the best option. You're always so busy with work. We didn't want to add to your stress." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. My hands were shaking, but I clenched them into fists, willing myself to stay calm. This wasn't just about a car. This was about trust. This was about being seen. They didn't get it. They couldn't understand why it hurt so much. "Where's the money?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper. My father's gaze shifted uncomfortably, and I knew right away that there was more to the story. "Your brother needs it for a deposit on a new apartment. He's been going through some tough times," my mother explained, but her words seemed hollow. I wasn't sure what stung more, the fact that my car was gone, or that my parents were willing to sacrifice everything I had worked for, just to protect my younger brother from the consequences of his own actions. It wasn't that I didn't care about my brother. I did. But there was something deeply frustrating about the way they coddled him, making excuses for his mistakes while overlooking everything I had done for them. I stood there in silence for a long moment, my mind swirling with anger, hurt, and confusion. "I don't know what to say," I muttered, turning and walking away from the table. I couldn't bear to look at them any longer. As I retreated to my room, I closed the door softly behind me, but the weight of the situation lingered. How could they do this to me? To us? It was only the beginning, I realized. The start of something much bigger than a missing car. A battle for respect, for acknowledgement. A battle that, for better or worse, I was now a part of. The next few days were a blur. I tried to keep busy, burying myself in work as if to escape the whirlwind of thoughts constantly crashing through my mind. But no matter how much I focused on my tasks, the weight of what had happened with the car kept gnawing at me. It was more than just a vehicle that had been taken from me, it felt like a part of my identity had been ripped away. Every time I passed the spot in the parking lot where my car used to be, my stomach tightened. I kept telling myself it was just a car, just a material thing. But that didn't help. The betrayal hurt more than I had expected. In the silence of my room, I replayed the conversation with my parents over and over again. The way they had spoken, almost as if they didn't understand why I was so upset. The way they dismissed my feelings, their tone casual, as though what they had done was completely justified. It stung, but what hurt even more was the realization that they didn't truly see me. One night, unable to sleep, I sat on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. The thoughts wouldn't stop. The tension was building, threatening to boil over. There had to be more to this than just a car being sold. I couldn't shake the feeling that my parents were hiding something bigger. The next morning, I decided to confront them again, but this time I was prepared. I wouldn't let them brush me off so easily. I had to know the truth. I found them in the kitchen, sitting across from each other, sipping coffee. They seemed too calm, too composed. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice calm but firm. "There's something you're not telling me." They both looked up, their faces unreadable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then my mother set her cup down slowly, as if weighing her next words carefully. "What are you talking about, honey?" she asked, her tone innocuous, but I could hear the subtle undertone of something, guilt, perhaps? "I know you sold my car," I began, "but that doesn't make sense. Why would you do that without talking to me first? And why would you just give the money to my brother?" My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "We told you, your brother was in a tough spot. He needed it. I didn't buy it. You sold something that was important to me, and you gave it to him. But there's more to this, isn't there? This isn't just about money for a deposit or some console. There's something you're hiding." My mother's face paled slightly, and I could see the hesitation in her eyes. She exchanged a brief glance with my father, and I knew right then that I was getting closer to the truth. "Maybe it's time you knew," my father said finally, his voice low and strained. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable. "But this isn't easy to explain." I sat down, my heart pounding. "Just tell me." My mother sighed deeply, looking away for a moment before turning back to face me. "Your brother, he's been in more trouble than you know. It's not just the money or the apartment. He's been involved in some dangerous things, things that could get him into serious trouble. I stared at them, trying to process what they were saying. What do you mean? What kind of trouble? My father glanced at my mother again, almost seeking permission, before he continued. We didn't want you to know, but your brother's gotten mixed up with the wrong crowd. There are people who expect things from him. And if he doesn't comply, he could end up in serious danger, my mother interrupted, her voice trembling. We didn't know who else to turn to. So, we did what we thought was best. We sold the car, hoping the money would buy him some time to get out of this situation. My mind was spinning. I couldn't make sense of it. My brother, the same one who couldn't keep a job for more than a week, who spent more time gaming than anything else, was involved in something like this? Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice rising. Why didn't you come to me for help? I could have figured something out. My father shook his head. We didn't want to drag you into this. You have enough on your plate already with work. And besides, we didn't think you would understand. The words stung, but I swallowed the bitterness. So you thought it would be better to just sell my car and keep me in the dark? How do you expect me to trust you after this? We didn't want to hurt you, my mother whispered, her voice breaking. We thought we were doing the right thing. We thought you'd be better off not knowing. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. You think I'm better off not knowing? You think I'm better off being left out of everything? My parents exchanged another look, their faces etched with regret. But it was too late. I was done. I need time to think, I muttered, turning toward the door. I can't deal with this right now. I didn't wait for a response. I left the house, the door slamming behind me as I stormed out into the night. The cold air hit me hard as I stepped outside, the city streets eerily quiet. My mind was a blur of anger, confusion, and betrayal. My car wasn't just gone, it had been stolen, sold, sacrificed for something much bigger than I had ever imagined. And now, as I stood there in the middle of the street, I couldn't help but wonder, how deep did my brother's involvement go? And what had my parents gotten themselves into by trying to protect him? I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the tip of the iceberg. Something far more dangerous was lurking just below the surface. The days that followed were filled with an unsettling silence. The house felt colder, emptier, as if everything had changed in an instant. I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation with my parents, about the secrets they had kept from me, about my brother. I had to know more. I needed answers. But as I thought about it more, one question kept coming back: why hadn't my brother told me anything? If things were really as bad as they said, why didn't he reach out? Why didn't he try to get help from me, from anyone? I felt an overwhelming need to find him, to confront him directly, to understand why he had let this spiral so far out of control. But finding him wasn't going to be easy. He had cut off contact a few weeks ago, suddenly disappearing from my life. And now, after what my parents had revealed, I realized how much of that time he had been slipping further away into this dangerous world. I decided to visit his last known address, the dingy apartment complex on the edge of town. It wasn't the safest area, but I didn't care. I was done sitting around, waiting for answers to fall into my lap. It was time for me to find them. As I approached the building, a sense of dread washed over me. The air felt heavier here, the noise of the city a distant hum as I stepped into the dimly lit lobby. The walls were cracked and peeling, the floor covered in trash and grime. It looked nothing like the place I had remembered when I had first visited him, just a few months ago. Now, it seemed like a place where people went to disappear. I found his apartment on the 3rd floor, but when I knocked on the door, there was no answer. I knocked again, harder this time, my frustration growing. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hall, and for a brief moment, I thought it was him. But when the door finally opened, it wasn't my brother. It was a man I didn't recognize, a tall, broad-shouldered guy with tattoos snaking up his arms, his eyes cold and unfazed. Who are you? I demanded, my voice sharper than I had intended. The man looked me up and down before speaking in a low, almost mocking tone. I could ask you the same thing. I didn't back down. I'm looking for my brother. His name is Ben. Is he here? The man eyed me suspiciously, as though trying to decide whether or not he should answer. Finally, he sighed and leaned against the doorframe. Your brother isn't here. He left a while ago. I clenched my fists, frustration bubbling inside me. Where did he go? What happened to him? The man didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. Maybe you should come inside. There are some things you need to know. I hesitated for a moment, but then curiosity got the best of me. I stepped inside, the musty air inside the apartment mixing with the scent of old cigarette smoke. The apartment was sparsely furnished, the only visible signs of life a few half-empty bottles of liquor and scattered papers on the floor. Sit down, the man said, pointing to a chair near the small kitchen table. I took a seat, my heart pounding in my chest. I'm going to tell you about your brother. But you won't like what you hear. I braced myself. I had no idea what to expect, but whatever it was, I knew it was going to change everything. He got mixed up with some bad people, the man began, his voice quieter now, as if the words themselves carried weight. People who don't let you walk away when you want to. Ben thought he could handle it, thought he could play both sides. But it doesn't work like that. Not with them. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. What are you talking about? Who are these people? The man leaned in, his face serious now. The kind of people who don't care about rules or laws. The kind who make you do things you wouldn't even think you were capable of. They're not just after money, they want power, control. And Ben? He got too deep, too fast. I could feel my pulse quicken. But why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he reach out for help? The man gave a bitter laugh. Because he was in too deep. You think he wanted to drag you into this? He couldn't. Not without putting you in danger, too. I felt a wave of panic rise in my chest. What do you mean? What happened to him? The man's expression darkened. I don't know exactly. He's been running from them, hiding. But they're getting closer. They won't stop until they find him, and when they do, it won't end well. Not for anyone. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My brother wasn't just in trouble. He was caught in something far worse than I had imagined, something that had turned him into a pawn in a game he couldn't control. And now, he was hiding. From who? From what? Where is he now? I asked, my voice trembling. The man looked at me with a mix of pity and regret. I don't know. But I can tell you this, you're in danger too. If you keep looking for him, you'll be pulling yourself deeper into this mess. They'll come for you, too. It's only a matter of time. The weight of his words settled heavily on me. It wasn't just my brother who was in danger now, it was me as well. And yet, I couldn't stop. I couldn't turn my back on him. He was my brother, after all. If I didn't fight for him, who would? I stood up abruptly, my decision made. I have to find him. I can't just let this go. The man didn't try to stop me. Instead, he gave me one last warning before I left, you've been warned. Be careful. They won't show mercy to anyone. As I left the apartment and stepped back into the night, I felt a cold chill crawl down my spine. The world I had known, the world I thought I understood, was unraveling faster than I could comprehend. And now, I was in the middle of it, tangled in something far darker than I had ever imagined. My brother was out there somewhere. And if I didn't find him soon, I feared it would be too late. The night air was thick with tension as I walked away from the apartment building. The man's words echoed in my head, warning me of the dangers I was about to face. But they were nothing compared to the sense of urgency that burned inside me. If my brother was out there, if he was still alive, I had to find him. I had to understand what had happened and how he had gotten entangled in this mess. I couldn't let him disappear without a trace. I didn't have much to go on, just the vague information from the man and the sense that time was running out. But there was one thing I knew for sure: I wasn't going to stop searching until I found Ben, no matter what it took. The next morning, I began my investigation. I went through his old contacts, trying to piece together who he had been talking to before he disappeared. Most of them were either unreachable or unwilling to help, but a few led me to a man named Carlos. He was someone Ben had mentioned a couple of times, a person he had met during his brief stint in the city's underground world. According to the few people who knew Carlos, he was connected to some pretty dangerous circles, people who could make things disappear without leaving a trace. I tracked Carlos down to a rundown bar at the edge of town. The place was the kind of spot you wouldn't visit unless you had business with the wrong people: flickering neon lights, a smoky haze in the air, and low conversations that seemed to stop whenever someone new walked in. I stepped inside, scanning the room for any sign of Carlos. A man at the bar glanced at me as I walked in, and I felt a chill run down my spine. He didn't look like someone who belonged in a place like this. Clean-cut, with a polished suit that didn't quite match the grimy surroundings. He was watching me, his gaze sharp and calculating. I made my way over to him, not bothering to pretend I wasn't looking for him. "Carlos?" I asked, my voice steady despite the unease swirling inside me. The man smiled, a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You're looking for someone," he said, his voice low and smooth, like he already knew what I wanted. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I'm looking for my brother. Ben. He was here a few weeks ago. I need to know where he went." Carlos took a sip of his drink, never taking his eyes off me. "Ben? He's a ghost now, sweetheart. He got too deep into things, and now he's out of sight. I wouldn't be looking for him if I were you." My frustration boiled over, but I kept my voice controlled. "I don't care how deep he got. I need to find him. You owe me that much." Carlos raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a mock smile. "Owe you? I don't owe anyone anything. But I'm willing to help, for the right price." I felt the blood rush to my face. "I don't have time for games. Just tell me where he is." Carlos's smile faltered, and for a moment, I saw something cold flash in his eyes. "Listen carefully, little girl. You don't understand what you're dealing with. There are people who have a claim on Ben now, and they don't like anyone poking around. You keep looking for him, and you might find more than you bargained for." I took a step closer, my voice hard. "I don't care who these people are. If Ben's alive, I will find him. And if you know something, I suggest you tell me. Now." There was a long pause. I could feel the weight of the moment settling between us, the tension thickening like smoke in the air. Finally, Carlos set his drink down and sighed. "All right," he said, his voice quieter now. "I'll tell you what I know. But after this, you're on your own." Carlos led me to a back room, away from the prying eyes in the bar. The room was sparse, with only a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling and a table covered in papers and old maps. He sat down and gestured for me to do the same. Ben didn't just get involved in petty crime. He got mixed up with a group much more dangerous than that. They're not after money, they're after power. Control over everything, and they'll do whatever it takes to get it. Ben's been running from them for weeks, but they don't let people just run. They'll catch up with him sooner or later. I leaned in, gripping the edge of the table as I listened. "Who are they? What do they want with him?" Carlos hesitated for a moment, clearly weighing his words. "They're a shadow organization. No one really knows who's at the top, but they've got their hands in everything. Politics, business, even law enforcement. They move through the cracks, and they make sure no one can trace their steps. I felt a shiver run down my spine. So Ben was involved with them? Not exactly, Carlos continued. Ben was working for them. Or rather, he was working under the assumption that he could control the situation. But they don't operate like that. Once you're in, there's no getting out. They'll either kill you or use you until you're of no more use. I sat back in my chair, trying to process what he was saying. So, he's a prisoner, then? He has no way of escaping? Carlos's expression softened for a brief moment, but the bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. He tried to get out, but the moment you try, they make you a target. And Ben wasn't prepared for that. None of us are. I stared at him, my thoughts racing. The fear and confusion I had felt earlier turned into something else now, something colder, more focused. Where is he now? Carlos didn't answer immediately, his gaze drifting away from mine as if he were searching for something. Then he spoke, his voice low. Last I heard, he was hiding out in a warehouse on the outskirts of town. It's not much, but it's the best I can do. If you want to find him, that's your lead. I stood up, the decision made. Thank you, I said, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. But I won't be going alone. If Ben's still alive, I'll make sure I'm not the only one left standing. Carlos didn't say anything as I turned to leave. He didn't need to. He knew what was coming, just as I did. As I stepped back into the night, the weight of the world seemed to press down on me. But there was one thing I knew for sure, I was getting closer. I was on the edge of something much bigger than I had ever imagined. And now, there was no turning back. The warehouse loomed in front of me, its cold, concrete walls barely visible in the darkness. The narrow alleyway I walked down was eerily quiet, save for the occasional shuffle of my boots on the cracked pavement. My heart beat louder than I would have liked to admit, but I pushed the anxiety aside. I wasn't about to back down now. This was the closest I had been to finding Ben, and I wasn't going to let anything stop me. I paused before the large, rusted doors of the warehouse. It looked abandoned, as if it had been forgotten by the city. But I knew better than to assume. The people Ben had gotten involved with didn't leave anything to chance, especially not a hideout like this. I checked my watch, almost midnight. If Ben was still here, it would be the perfect time to move in unnoticed. Taking a deep breath, I approached the entrance cautiously, my eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. The last thing I wanted was to walk into an ambush. I reached for the door handle, my hand trembling slightly despite my attempts to steady it. I pushed the door open just enough to slip inside. The interior was dark and smelled of rust and decay. The space was vast, the dim light filtering through broken windows casting long shadows across piles of old equipment and discarded crates. I strained my ears, listening for any sound that might indicate Ben's presence, or worse, someone else's. There was a slight creak from the far corner. I froze. My heart skipped a beat as I tried to focus, but all I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears. Slowly, I moved toward the sound, staying low, using the shadows to my advantage. My hand instinctively reached for the small flashlight tucked into my pocket. As I rounded the corner, I nearly collided with a man. My breath caught in my throat. I was face to face with a man I didn't recognize, his features sharp and hardened, his eyes cold and calculating. A silent standoff ensued, neither of us moving. Finally, he broke the silence. "What are you doing here?" His voice was gravelly, tinged with suspicion, but there was a dangerous edge to it. He wasn't just anyone. I could feel the threat hanging in the air like an electric current. "I'm looking for someone," I replied, my voice steady despite the fear that had crept up on me. "A man named Ben. You know him?" The man's gaze flickered to the side, and I saw the muscles in his jaw tense. "I don't know anyone by that name," he said, but there was something in his tone, something that didn't quite match his words. I wasn't fooled. I knew he was lying. "I'm not here to waste time," I said, taking a step closer. I know you work with the people who have him. Where is he? Tell me now, or things will get ugly for you. The man's lips twisted into a half-smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He stepped back slightly, his hand brushing the gun holstered at his waist. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I realized just how dangerous this situation was. You think you can walk in here and demand answers? This isn't your fight, girl. You're out of your depth. I didn't flinch. I don't care if it's my fight. I'll do whatever it takes to find my brother. The man's smile faded, and for a brief moment I saw a flash of something, recognition, maybe even fear, in his eyes. He seemed to hesitate, as though deciding whether or not to call for backup. Before he could make a move, a voice echoed through the warehouse, cutting through the tension like a knife. Let her go. I spun around at the sound of the voice. It was familiar, deep, and laced with authority. My heart leapt as I recognized the figure standing at the far end of the room. Ben. He was standing there, looking as if he had just stepped out of the shadows, his eyes weary but alive. His face was thinner than I remembered, and there were signs of a struggle in the way he held himself, but there was no mistaking it, he was here. Alive. The man in front of me stiffened, but Ben's calm, controlled presence seemed to diffuse the tension in the air. Ben. I cried, rushing toward him before I even realized it. But as I took a step forward, I was stopped by the cold, sharp tone of the man. Hold it right there, he snapped, his hand now fully gripping the gun. I froze, my eyes darting between the man and Ben, trying to gauge the situation. Ben's face was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something, regret, maybe, in his gaze. Don't do anything stupid, Ben said, his voice low but firm. Just stay calm. The man didn't lower the gun, but he seemed to hesitate. The atmosphere in the warehouse was thick with the potential for violence, yet there was something almost surreal about it. I was so close to Ben, and yet there were still so many unanswered questions. Ben, what's going on? I asked, my voice shaky but desperate. What have you gotten yourself into? Who are these people? Ben didn't answer immediately. He glanced at the man, and then back at me, as if trying to decide how much to reveal. Finally, he spoke, his words weighed down with exhaustion. I didn't have a choice, Mary. They made me work for them. I tried to get out, but it's not that simple. They don't let you go once you're in. You're a pawn, and once they have you, they don't let go. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach, the pieces of the puzzle starting to come together. You were running from them. That's why you disappeared. He nodded, his expression filled with regret. I was trying to find a way out, but it was too late. They already know I'm here. If you stay, you're in danger too. I could feel the urgency in his voice. He wanted me to leave, to get out of here before it was too late. But I couldn't just walk away again. Not now. Not when I was so close. I'm not leaving without you, I said, my voice firm, despite the fear gripping my chest. Ben's eyes flashed with something close to panic. You don't get it. This is bigger than just me. They'll come for you. They'll destroy everything you care about. You have to go, now. Please, Mary. The man took a step forward, his gun still pointed in our direction. You heard him. Get out. Now. I hesitated for a moment, the weight of Ben's words sinking in. But the look in his eyes, the plea for me to be safe, made my decision for me. I couldn't risk both of us being caught in this nightmare. I turned to leave, but as I did, I felt a sharp pang of guilt. There was no way I could leave Ben behind, not after all this time. And then, as I reached the door, I heard Ben's voice one last time. I'll come back for you. I swear it. I knew then that this wasn't over. The path ahead was darker and more dangerous than I had ever imagined, but I couldn't stop now. Not when Ben needed me.